Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this first webinar on the use of integrated photonics for healthcare. And we hope to show you all the interesting possibilities that it actually has. This session will be focusing on vital signs. We plan other ones on pathogens, imaging and intervention. My name is Karel de Vries. I'm responsible for strategy and startup support in PhotonDelta. And I will show to you in a moment all the interesting possibilities that integrated photonics actually has for healthcare, what integrated photonics actually is, what type of platforms there are, and how you could use them. But I will start with introducing PhotonDelta itself. And PhotonDelta is both an organization and an ecosystem, and it is a very vibrant ecosystem with lots of different possibilities for new applications. And that's the part where we hope to really get you interested in and really get your attention. Of course, talk is cheap. You can talk about interesting technologies. We will actually have 4 presentations of companies, startup companies that are actually doing it already. Photon First, Vitalware, PraxisSense, and Multispectra. You will hear them in a moment. We will not take questions after each presentation because time is short. Please put your questions in the chat. We have Natalia Uzmayakava, our expert from TNO, gathering all the questions. She will summarize that, and we will have a questions session after the presentations. The session will be recorded, so there is also a possibility to look afterwards at the material again. So, introducing PhotonDelta. PhotonDelta is actually 2 things. One, it's an ecosystem of companies active in integrated photonics. In the meantime, more than 70, plus a large number of R&D institutes and universities. Secondly, PhotonDelta is an organization. I'm part of that. And we exist to develop the ecosystem, create economic development, create business possibilities. To do that, the Dutch government has set up a growth fund. We've got 1.1 billion euro out of that growth fund to run a program to actually do that. Besides, with many partners executing that program, we also spent a lot of energy in international and EU relationships. This is a global business. It's worldwide. We do a lot of work on market investigations, market development, and also a lot of work on talent development, because no company can exist without good people. Last but not least, we have a startup fund, because a lot of these new technologies need to get growing into a start. And we hope by doing seed investment to grow that ecosystem faster. So, all in all, a cooperating supply chain of companies backed by a strong ecosystem with a lot of knowledge and financial and government backing. What could be wrong with that? Very briefly, to give you a picture, I talk about a complete supply chain. And a complete supply chain means that you can have your chip designed, you can have your wafers fabricated, you can have them packaged, you can have made modules out of them, and there are of course a lot of companies involved in applications. You will hear a few of them. Also, there are companies involved in our ecosystem that can help you with the software and electronics development that you need also. And on the bottom row you see a long list of institutes that we are working with and partnering with. By now you might wonder, what's so great about integrated photonics? I can talk hours about that, but I will leave that to my partners. But the fact is that photonic integration allows complex optical functions to be put on a single chip. In that sense, it is really a semiconductor technology with all the effects that you have seen in the revolution that semiconductors has caused in our society over the last decades. So you put all those functions on a chip, you produce it as it were a chip, you use the tools that are used in chip making. The difference is you use photons instead of electrons. And in other words, light. The advantage is that you can make things small, you can make things reliable, you can make things with very low power consumption, and last but not least, because it's a chip technology, it's very scalable, and for that reason you can produce high volumes at low cost. In healthcare, the more specifically interesting areas for that are, of course, wearables and point-of-care solutions. You'll hear more about that. I think over the last few years we have developed a very complete set of technology platforms for health, probably the most extensive in the world, and you will hear a number of examples. One is near-infrared spectrometry. You will hear a presentation from Multispectra about that. You can extend the range into the deeper mid-infrared or even into the terahertz range. We'll not talk about that today. You will have possibilities to measure gases very sensitively into the ppb range by use of either photoabsorption, photoacoustic or photothermal gas sensors. Environmental sensing is of course a big one, but there are a lot of other possibilities. For very specific compound detection, Raman spectrometry has been popular for a while, but the equipment tends to be big and expensive, and we do see now actual possibilities to put that into one or several types of chips. Another presentation you'll hear today is about laser speckle imaging. You might not have heard about that, but it's actually a very interesting technology that will be explained by Leonard in a moment. To continue, optical coherence tomography is already used a lot in dermatology and eye care, but so far the equipment is also pretty bulky. You see are actually quite a number of developments to put it on chips as well. Biochips are effectively very sensitive interferometers with a layer on top that is sensitive to a certain pathogen, a bacteria or a bad material, and you can detect that in that way. Last one, and you will have two presentations using this technology, is about fiber Bragg gratings. It's a difficult sentence for fiber technology where you can do extremely sensitive measurements. But I will not tell more about that because you will hear that in a second. Altogether, I think we have a very vibrant ecosystem to support your applications. We think we are a hotspot for integrated photonics here in this region, with extensive knowledge on people, both in photonics and healthcare, with a complete supply chain to support that development and actually produce things, and with extensive support available. In the Brainport region, there are many companies that can do that. We have institutes like the ones that are co-hosting this today with us, TNO and TOE. You have the photonics ecosystem in PhotonDelta, and we are ready to support you. And last but not least, a startup fund and a lot of connections with venture capital in order to help you to set up, grow, or use your business. Thank you very much. And then now I would like to have the first speaker, Thijs van Leest, Photon First. Photon First has been on the basis of the fiber Bragg grating technology. And before I get about the enormous amount of application that it possibly has, I will hand it over to you to explain all about it.
Thank you, Carol. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us online. I'm going to talk today about integrated photonics and how that can be used for fiber optic sensing. At Photon First, we have a long history in working with integrated photonics and fiber optic sensing. We're a company based in Alkmaar, in the north of the Netherlands. And we have a diverse team of different backgrounds, educations, and roles in the company, from the early stage research, development, product development, production, and specific application and sales targeting on the applications for the variety of applications where this technology can be used for. So let's dive into that. So our main focus is on FPG sensing, and these sensors are inscribed into an optical fiber, which you might have also running to your home for internet. And you can have sensors inscribed, so-called fiber Bragg gratings, and these reflect a particular color of light. And the color is determined also as a function of its environment. So if I would stretch the fiber, or if I would heat it up, the color that it reflects is changing, and by that you can use it as a sensing element. And depending on how it is then deployed in its environment, you can use it for strain sensor, or temperature sensor, or pressure sensing. And you could even combine different types of sensors in a single optical fiber strand. So it gives a whole wide range of opportunities to measure that. And you can cascade different sensors in a single line, because with light it passes through each other. And because it's a passive sensor, it is also immune to, for instance, electromagnetic effects. It can withstand harsh environments. And the fiber has a very small diameter, so it can also reach places which are hard to reach. For instance, in many medical or minimal invasive applications, that's one of the big advantages. So it can be a direct measurement, such as strain or temperature, or more derived measurement, thinking of pressure or even shape sensing, which I will tell a little bit more about. Now, the integrated photonics comes in to make the measurement system more scalable in terms of the size, the weight, and power, so the overall footprint that it brings. And that makes it also attractive to bring these applications further to medical field. And at PhotoFirst, we have a long heritage in building and developing our products, and already of this technology. And this really makes it possible to shrink all the optical functionalities for the refined detection of the colors of light, so the spectrometer on chip, light sources, to shrink that down and stabilize it also. So that makes it possible to do very extreme precision of measurements and also make those devices more integrated and scalable. And as time progresses and more of the technology can be integrated, we also advance in the generations of these systems, making them more compact and with a smaller footprint. And we're right now on the verges of introducing our Gen 3 solutions, which are really groundbreaking in the cost level and the level of integration that can be reached with it. So particularly to inspire some applications, and there will be also some more later on. So for instance, in surgical tools, the fiber sensors can be used to very accurately measure the force being exerted. And the technology of the chips allows to make a compact device which is integrated into the boxes and could even be developed towards handheld devices. And a very high-speed sensing makes it possible for a haptic feedback loop to be created, to have a direct empowerment of the amount of force that that's being exerted and fed back to the surgeon, so that he can feel how much force it is applying to, for instance, a patient, and you can even feel the pulsation of the heartbeat through a vein when that is being grabbed. And so we co-developed the entire optical solution in this, from how to embed the fiber seamlessly into the integration with all the connections, and also the module with the right data interface and low latency connectivity. Another example is in the very high precision. So for Amazec Photonics, we applied a technology that can measure extreme small color changes, so in the femtometer ranges, and that translates to an FPG in a millikelvin temperature differentiations that we can measure. And this opens up a whole new world of applications to explore, and they are using it to determine, for instance, the cardiovascular state of a patient, looking at the progression of temperature changes throughout the body. And we developed and adapted our technology towards the system. Another interesting application is in shape sensing. So if you imagine you would have a fiber with the course off-center, and whenever you then bend the fiber, you would get an elongation on the outer curve and then compression on the inside. And this allows you to reconstruct the curvature at that point. And if you do that then at many positions, you can reconstruct the entire shape of the device. And so together with customers, we would look at how to integrate and optimize the positions of the sensors to make sure that it fits the best to your application. There's also a video of that. So you see on the left side, in the tube section where the fiber is in the blue tube, the fiber with the Bragg ratings is present. And on the screen, you see the reconstruction of the 3D shape of that fiber. Of course, if you embed the device, the fiber to a plate, which is on the example on the right, so the FPGs are in a triangular orientation. This allows us to measure flap and torsion of it as well. So there's different ways of integrating that. So how do we work together? We like to co-develop with the customers that know the market very well and the application needs, to look how both the sensor, the system and the data processing fits best in the application. So both from the design side, making sure it also complies with the needs for development in the medical domain. So we're familiar with the ISO 13485, and then also to translate that to well-producible devices. So in the manufacturing, we have our own clean room. You see that a bit in the background for the manufacturing, both for the packaging of those photonic chips and also system assembly. So with that, I'd like to give the floor to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thijs. A number of interesting applications. I hope this has inspired you to think about even more interesting applications that we haven't thought about yet. But now I want to introduce Kostas Furias of Vitalware, who actually has thought about an application of fibers that is quite interesting and something I at least had not thought of before you told me. So, take it away.
Very good. Thank you, Karel. Good afternoon, everyone. Pressure ulcers are a worldwide healthcare challenge. In the US, 2.5 million people are affected every year, and 60,000 of them die because of pressure ulcer complications. On top of this, due to the litigation culture, there are 17,000 lawsuits every year towards hospitals for poor care. And these are typically settled for an average of $250,000 per patient. Of course, these are just the litigation costs. Next to that, there are the treatment costs, which can amount to almost $150,000 per patient. And of course, the problem is really worldwide. We're mentioning here just the US numbers, but of course, similar treatment expenses are seen in other countries. The pressure ulcers are a very painful they're a very painful disease. Which is categorized in four categories, from mild to severe. I will show you some pictures which are very nasty, and I hope you're not eating behind the screen. So let's go. This is stage 1. And this is stage 2. This is stage 3. And stage 4, and we're off. Truth is that pressure ulcers can impact anyone who is immobilized, including wheelchair users. They typically occur at the buttocks or at the heels. And of course, pressure ulcers can be prevented. All you need is a couple of nurses running after every patient and turning them every 2 hours. But of course, we know that this is very difficult because there's a worldwide shortage of healthcare workers. And of course, these are data from a Dutch repository. But the labor market has shortage in healthcare professionals, and that will further intensify in the next decade. There are some competitors out there that do monitoring of pressure, but we know that pressure monitoring is not enough because pressure does not have enough predictive power. And there are some other competitors that offer handheld devices. Of course, this just needs, this requires the nurses to pick the device up and point to the patient and do a measurement. Well, this just causes more work for the nurses. In Vitalware, we believe that temperature monitoring is the key. A US study using thermographic imaging indicates that localized temperature decrease, which is a marker of ischemia, followed by a localized temperature increase, which is a marker for inflammation, can be related to a development of pressure ulcer. And in VitalWare, we're looking for those signals. Our solution consists of optical fiber sensing technology, in practice FBG sensors, which are integrated in a textile, and they are placed on top of a hospital mattress below the patient, and that allows for measurement of pressure and temperature continuously and autonomously without a nurse to be present. And that measurement allows for, that will trigger an event every time the nurses need to act. Next to that, we can also provide instructions on the caregivers on how to act. And of course, if there are interesting findings, we can also introduce those to the electronic health record of the patient. We believe that the clinical use case in the current, workflow, all the patients are tended too often, and that is not needed. With our technology, we're reducing that to an event-based, data-driven approach where the nurses should act when there is a need, but they shouldn't act when there's no need and no signal from our sensor. That will allow the patients to rest further at night, as good rest promotes healing. At the same time, we know that there is a understaffing in night shifts, so that will eliminate the need for nurses to spend time on. I will skip this slide in view of time. Our intellectual property, we're focusing our intellectual property into 5 pillars, ranging from sensing technology all the way to user interface and experience. And we have recently filed a patent at the European Patent Office. Here, I'm showing you an experiment with which we aim to verify that our sensor is capable and sensitive enough to measure on-skin temperature variations. We use the common thermal cream to simulate a pressure ulcer, and I'll show you the timeline of the experiment. We first placed the arm on the sensor, then we applied thermal cream, and over the course of the remaining 2 or 2.5 hours, we monitored the temperature both with the sensor and with the thermal camera. And we saw that the results from the 2 measurement systems were in very good agreement. We have a very enthusiastic team which covers technology, regulatory, and business competencies, which is very motivated to bring the company to the next phase. We're also surrounded by a network of supporters from photonics, data management, textile integration, as well as clinical. We have lined up a series of milestones, and in 2025 we will be focusing in making our device compliant, regulatory compliant, and followed by clinical evaluation at 2 sites in the Netherlands. And then in 2026 we're going to focus on the clinical trial, following by 2027 launch of sales for the Netherlands, and later on in 2028 US and Germany. And of course, as the photonics technology further evolves, both in price and size and mobility, we will unlock further interesting application areas, both inside but also outside pressure ulcers, such as orthopedic surgery, vital signs monitoring, sleep analysis, and Parkinson. Well, if this is an interesting opportunity for you, let's have a talk. We will be very happy to see what the use case is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kostas. I really hope you get your system into the market before anybody of us has a kind of nasty things that you just described. Next speaker, completely different topic. Leonard Mone, PraxisSense, laser spectral imaging, probably a technology you've not heard about before, but allows very interesting possibilities in the detection of blood flow and other things that you can measure with the technology. And you're going to tell us all about it.
Thank you very much,
Go
Karel.
ahead.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Really love to tell you more about it. Can I have my slides, please? Thank you very much. What we do is enable wearable OEMs, so original equipment manufacturers, to win the health revolution, or simply said, we make your wearable medical in the future. And that's needed because 45% of the Americans, for example, already use a smartwatch, and they do that mainly to track their health data. They want to see how healthy they are or what their problems are. But if you go to the doctor with this smartwatch and all the nice data sets that you have collected, what does the doctor say? You cannot use this data at all. It's not reliable enough. And the reason behind that is the sensor in your smartwatch. That sensor is also found in SpO2 monitors and remote patient monitors, in clinic use. A lot of these sensors are on the market. But this sensor is 90-year-old technology. It's just an LED that shines into your skin and reads the reflection of the absorption of the blood flow. But this is very limited data. It's only relative. It is very sensitive for movement or other light artifacts, and even has a huge problem with skin color. An example on this is actually the US in the COVID, where a lot of darker skin tone people got wrong SpO2 monitoring measurements and got the wrong amount of oxygen. That's a huge problem, of course. And that's where we found a solution with our ALICE sensor, or absorption laser interference sensor, where we use lasers instead of photodiode LEDs and a small camera instead of a photodiode, where we shine into the skin with a multiple lasers and create an interference pattern. This interference pattern is called the speckle pattern that Karel just mentioned. This speckle pattern is very special in the sense that we can capture 3 times more data from it. It's more robust in movement, it's reliable with other light intervals, and we're backwards compatible, and we don't have any problem with skin tone. We're recognized by a very renowned player in this field as the highest GRL level company globally. And we have our first chips ready, together with the TU Delft, Fraunhofer Institute, and Advico. To explain a little bit more about the technology, this is the speckle, dynamic speckle that we measure, or proprietary algorithms translated in usable algorithms that are almost reaching absolute values. What we measure is blood speed and blood volume. The blood speed is the novel signal, and the blood volume is the old signal. Then that's why we are backwards compatible. And with these signals, we can actually do 2 things mainly in the healthcare application. On one side, we can improve the current parameters, such as heart rate variability, but also SpO2 to a very high standard. But we can unlock new parameters that are vitally important for the healthcare system, such as blood pressure, cardiac output, cardiovascular risk index, and maybe even blood vessel stiffness. We do that with our partners, Philips, CCM, and Whittings. And we aim at 3 distinct large markets. As I mentioned before, our main target market is the smartwatch market, because this is the largest market, where we can do the same thing for in-hospital monitoring and remote monitoring. But our end goal is to bring these markets more and more together, so you can actually monitor vitally, medically on your smartwatch. It's a very large market. About 350 million smartwatches are sold with PPG sensors, or devices are sold with PPG sensors, and it's growing very quickly. We can sell this sensor, depending on the volume, between 7 and 25 euros. And we see that creates traction. So we were on CES the first time this year, in January, and that was a pivotal moment for us, where you gained a lot of new clients and prospect clients. About 20 different OEMs reached out to us at CES and that we engaged with them, and we're still engaging with them. We're building a partnership with NXP right now that we are very excited for, and working with several different local companies here to implement our product first, mainly with Whittings. But of course, we're not alone in the world. Our main competitor was Rockley Photonics, that really also built a comparative technology. Unfortunately for us, they mainly focus on glucose monitoring. While we see the potential in this market, we don't believe this technology especially is suited for glucose monitoring due to the differences in the skin. This technology is exceptionally focused on cardiovascular market, and that's where we excel in. We see a lot of different PPG sensors on the market, but we really can outcompete them. That makes our technology really exciting to work with. And we have a really exciting team. Myself, I'm the founder and CEO of Praxissense. Lies Lotte Stolk is my co-founder, and we just hired a new CTO, CPTO, Jurgen van den Berg, who worked for several other companies. We have a very strong scientific and medical advisory board from, for example, Dr. Dini Bhattacharya, who actually was the inventor of this technology, and a very strong advisory board, with for the former CTO of Philips, Henk van Houten, Henk Westendorp, former Medtronic, and Franklin Schuling, and Boudewijn Doctor in our advisory board. And we are almost launching our first product. In September, we will be launching our evaluation kit that will be available on the market for interested parties to buy. We can work together to really evaluate our new signals and see what this signal can do for you, enabling you to win the health revolution. Thank you very much. A bit quicker than time.
Well, it was a very it was quite a strong presentation on the possibilities, and every time I see this, I think, wow! If you can combine this with a few other sensors, there is almost no limit to what you can actually measure. Well, that's a nice introduction for introducing Giuseppe Coppola, who is actually from Multispectra going to talk about what you can actually do with a near-infrared sensor, which is extremely small and still has an enormous amount of different possibilities. So,
thanks, Karel.
Exciters.
Yeah, I like your point that there are several sensors technology, or let's say several ways to skin a cat. So I'm going to talk about yet another one, very close, by the way, to the problem. So I need to talk about the problems. The problems have been very well explained by our previous speakers. But in practice, we target with our technology similar classes. But let me explain a little bit. Of course, this is very generic. There is a huge trend. I just want to point out that particularly that there is an interest, as was also pointed out, in the consumer domain and the borders of consumer and medical preventive healthcare, of course, for, let's say, more accurate insights into health. A little bit about us. We are a company which focuses on a technology. So actually our vision and mantra is a single product. One size fits all will be the key way to actually reduce cost and make really the promise of the low cost miniaturized solutions. Let's talk a bit about our product. What you see there is our product, say the first one, the bigger one, 1.0 was launched in January, but we're already working on a second version, even smaller, same die, different packaging, which is already in an alpha stage. You can see there. It's 4 by 4 millimeter. The die itself is 1.1 millimeter. And what it does, it's a spectrometer. Basically, it's a spectral sensor which combined with a light source, of course, and integrated front end becomes a spectrometer altogether. There are 4 key unique selling points which make this product unique. Let me first introduce the first 2. First is the broad wavelength range. So it covers a very wide range which starts into the visible, say 550-ish, and then ends up at 1700, which is quite a large range, goes well beyond, for instance, what silicon can do, which normally stops at 900 and so on. Second point is that after years of research, we decided in our one-size-fits-all philosophy to stick to a product with 16 channels, and every channel is also defined in a way that has multiple peaks, like dominant peaks and side lobes. This creates, comparing to the PPG that was mentioned before, let's say if PPG is typically one wavelength and one data point, this is like, 4 times 16 is about 64 data points. Let's say 2 orders of magnitude more, at least almost, say, data points, which of course can be used for all sorts of applications. Next to this philosophical, say, theoretical approach, which is called, by the way, computational spectroscopy, we also address the fabrication issue. It's about indium gallium arsenide and indium phosphide, therefore the highest, say, signal-to-noise ratio you can get. And the fact that we use, of course, integrated photonics technology, semiconductor standards fabrication processes, make it possible to introduce concepts which is very important, by the way, in this domain of sensing, like high reproducibility and, of course, small footprint, low cost. Now, let's talk a bit about the application. I cannot show logo of other customers for some reasons. Other companies apparently can, but our customers don't like. So I have to go by the existing literature to convince you that our technology has value. Another thing I can say is that we're not inventing a new methodology of sensing. We are just basically making commercially viable what is possible today, has been demonstrated by a lot of papers, that things can be done by using multiple LEDs and multiple light source in the near domain, and there is a lot of literature available. We just make it possible in a commercially viable solution. We identified, say, 3 main classes. One class is exactly what the previous speaker was talking about. So PPG, which now this trend is called about multi-wavelength PPG in order to resolve all the problem of, let's say, racial bias, for instance, or due to different spin pigmentation or motion artifacts and so on. So I will, of course, not go through it, but the slides will be available later. There is, say, a bit of top of the iceberg of literature which shows that this can be used for improving PPG, heart rate, pulse oximetry, heart rate variability, but also blood pressure. A second class is about really biomarkers insight. Also here there is plenty of literature which shows that if you expand your domain of insights to NIR with a spectroscopy approach, you can measure glucose or cholesterol, lactate, hydration. Of course, this has to be verified in the context of specific applications, and there is still, let's say, research to be done. But basically, this constitutes a huge basis to believe our technology can be also useful for this class of problems. And by the way, also we, after CES, we got many customers that are working actually actively on this and finding this out now with our sensor. A third class is about skin quality. So here we go in a slightly different domain. This is more about, let's say, either for cosmetics applications or for more like early detection of for instance, problems related to dermatological issues. Also here, same story, plenty of research about detecting sebum or hydration of skin and so on. So again, we make this possible for real and not in, say, Frankenstein prototypes in research labs. Also, pressure injury was also mentioned. Actually, there is also there, and actually here it's a little bit more than just research made by third. We are involved in a European project called PhotonMed, where we will be providing the technology to be used, of course, for verifying and validating. This can be also measured. And let's say we focus on providing technology, so maybe we could become a supplier of, or in your the previous trajectory of, let's say, sensor fusion from one of the previous speakers. Last but not least is about also the area of FNIRS. It's very well known that you can measure, let's say, cortical, basically variation of hemoglobin in the brain. Also, there is a bit more far-fetched, but there are also there interest from some companies about tracking these, being in the instant consumer domain, like cognitive assessments, still in the area of medical issue or training, but also imagine Formula One, for instance, drivers and so on, but also gaming. It's a bit more far-fetched, but once the cost will go down, why not? So to conclude, we have, of course, done some, at least this I can show that we can actually pick up the signal from all of our, let's say, channels. As I said, I have 16 channels. What you see there in that picture is a plot, a real-time plot with a very simple, basically, pickup scheme with our device of the 16 channel. The key takeaway is that it's a huge trend. There is, of course, let's say, the NIR is a known methodology, and we can make this viable with our one-size-fits-all. And we have a development kit for those interested. And I want to launch in the last 50 seconds, given that I know that in the audience are a lot of universities, also a very interesting contest. So we are opening up a so-called Open Innovation Contest. We saw that not only companies, but also a lot of universities were interested to make use of our, let's say, device to bring forward their research with a real commercially viable solution. So therefore, I announced today that we are about to launch this program. Make, of course, their case for the whatever technology application solutions they want to target. Of course, our priorities are in the areas I just mentioned, so advanced vital sign monitoring, biomarkers inside, and skin quality. And we will decide who the winners are, and they will exploit our development kit for free, and we will make business together. So, there you go.
The most exact timing seen so far. Oh yeah, sorry. All right. Thank you very much to the speakers. I think, I hope the audience today has gotten an idea about all the possibilities that there are. There was a lot of useful information. I guess it was also a dense set of information. So we hope this has piqued your interest and you want to know more. And of course, what we are now going to do is into a session where you can ask questions. And Natalia, our photonic expert from TNO, has gathered all those questions so far. Please keep them coming. If you have other comments you want to give, we can use for next sessions, please do so as well. But I think now we are ready to start the session and get some interesting some interesting discussions going on.
Yeah, very good, very good. Thank you very much. It's really very enjoyable and very informative session. Thank you so much, the speakers, and indeed the questions are popping up. So let me perhaps start with a photon first. Fiber break gradient sensor. So we have a question, very technical one. So how is the accuracy and reliability of your devices measured and shared with the users? And how do you follow standardization protocols, etc.?
Okay, very good questions. Yes, of course the key to measurements is a good definition of what we are talking about. So there's different aspects of the resolution. So the step size, basically, how good you can measure. The noise floor is typically looked at, so what we could call the precision. And there's a link to also the speed of measurement in that. And then you have the overall trueness of the measurement, so how close you are to the true value. And then there's contributions from the system and from the sensors, and also from the translation from the parameter of interest, such as temperature or strain, to the optical sensor, and then the translation to the overall system picture. So we look at an integral part of that. And for a standard system, we can have a standard specified means. And we also make, for instance, use of the standards defined internationally about how to define those. And then particular, for instance, in the cases of the extreme temperature sensing, we would dive into the exact needs of the customers, determine exactly under which conditions also the measurements need to take place, especially if you're measuring with such a high level of sensitivity. It's also required that the conditions, both on the sensor and the device, are very stable for the conditions of the measurement. So that's a vital part of the development which we do together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So perhaps to add on this question, so I see that Photon First does a lot of co-development, tuning on the requirements of potential partners. So how can entities reach out to you?
Well, they can come to us in different channels. So, of course, via our website, or contact me, or the details shared in the presentation. Mm-hmm. And we would typically look together with application engineers on the case of interest. So, what are the measurement needs? And then to look how, of course, preferably with an already existing solution, and there where needed, look at what kind of customization would be needed to integrate either the system or the sensors, and thereby sketch how the integration looks like.
Wonderful. Yeah. So simply contact Photon First.
Yep.
Now the questions were popping up for Vitalware. Mm. Yeah. So there is an interesting question on, can you comment on collaborations with the automated hospital bed producers in order to enable mass manufacturing your technology and reaching it hospitals?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually an interesting question. This is something we haven't reached out or formed collaborations, but this is something we are looking into. Eventually, it would be an interesting way to offer our solution to the hospitals. And of course, we're looking also to serve organizations next to hospitals, that is nursing homes and also home care. So if there's somebody at the audience that has particular connections, we would be happy to discuss that further.
Okay, wonderful. And then if you look at your technology and application, so what is it that integrated photonics enables that is really making you unique?
That's a good one as well. So integrated photonics offers a unique combination. First of all, there are technical elements that, well, photonics or fiber optics allow to use. That is the small form factor of sensors, and also the fact that we can integrate different types of sensors in a single fiber. That is not something that electronics can very easily accommodate. Typically, we need bulkier sensors, dedicated wiring for the sensors, switching at either ends. This is something that the technology, and Photon First in particular, has done very well. And this allows us to go much further. And of course, as the technology evolves further, we will be able to also integrate even more sensors at the smaller, on one fiber at the smaller form factors as well.
Wonderful, yes. So let's continue. So there was a wonderful talk by Leonard from Praxis Sense, and questions are popping up. I cannot even catch up with collecting them. Very good approach. And there is a question about what can you comment about accuracy difference between your technology and existing standalone devices, and how are you calibrating your device, your technology, in order to prove that the data have sufficient accuracy?
So we cannot tell you the exact numbers yet, but we're developing now the evaluation kit, and we will both integrate our LS sensor and a traditional PPG sensor in the same kit, in the same form factor, where we can head-to-head compare it directly, and also sell that to our clients or a research institute that want to use that. This will be available on the 1st of September. Please reach out if you're interested, and we can set up a collaboration on testing on your specific needs and your application.
Wonderful. And there is a follow-up question. Are you already putting perhaps your fingers on applying your technology for blood pressure sensing?
Internally, yes, we are. And we are definitely making progress on that. But unfortunately, I cannot tell you anything publicly about it.
Yeah, and there are again more questions with respect to accuracy and calibration. So I guess people can reach out.
Do reach
to
out,
Praxis.
info@praxissense.com.
Yeah. And a question: how would you, if you are to give 10-second pitch, how do you discriminate yourself from others?
So what we have is a very well understanding of the theoretical side of speckle imaging, how the lasers interfere in the skin. We have understood that very well to the very strong theoretical side, but we apply that practical in our lab in a real-world environment, and we combine those every day in our results and apply them directly in our product that we're building and in development. And that combination is really strong, because we see that a lot of competition has also mostly a lot of knowledge on the practical side, but for example, not a real theoretical understanding.
Get it. And of course, you are developing technology platform that can be generic across multiple applications. Could you comment on how can you position yourself in the medical domain and consumer segment? Are there any challenges, or what are your maneuvers to serve both fields?
Yeah, so what we see is actually the most of the needs are the same, but certification is completely different, and the validation of your device is completely different. We're working with, for example, in the cardiac care at home study or Katrina Hospital, together really to validate our signals and to collect the data sets that our clients can use to do the certification, so we can enable them more and better to obtain the certification. But in the end, our technology is really suitable to get the consumer market and the medical field closer together. And make the average device more medical applicable.
Very good, very good. Giuseppe, multispectra was everywhere, CES, so everywhere in the news. So questions to multispectra. If we understand correctly, the use detector technology is InGaAs, indium gallium arsenide, which means that technology platform is indium phosphide. Is that correct? Is indium phosphide with a smaller wafer size suitable for addressing large volume consumer markets?
Oh, okay.
That's
Well, of course, there is a trend also in indium phosphide of having larger wafers. Of course, we already work with suppliers which work with 4 inches. And of course, there are already plans to go further with that. Say, it is a fair point that indium phosphide is a more, say, breakable material than others. On the other hand, let's say, we see that in volumes this still can be, our chip is extremely small, so even though the wafer is not huge, we can still achieve the cost and the price point that the market requires. Maybe this gives me the possibility to stick even more to the point that when customers buy integrate a multispectra chip or sensing unit in their solutions, they basically buy really a one-size-fits-all platform with different software, can enable all sorts of applications, as opposed to a dedicated sensor for each specific problem. So in that sense, the economy of scale and the multitude of applications that can be run on our platform makes this possible.
wonderful. There is another technology.
Can I add something to that? Because
Absolutely.
the remark that Giuseppe made about wafer size is correct. But in fact, we can be more precise than that. Sure. There is an actual project running to build a 150 millimeter indium phosphide plant here actually in Eindhoven. And that should take care of some of the worries in terms of volumes. I certainly would say that it should not hold you back.
Wonderful, yeah. And there is another technical question to you, Giuseppe, or maybe logistics. So you are, of course, making a detector. How about the light source? Is it already integrated into your system, or how to deal with that?
Okay, we position ourselves as, say, a spectral sensor chip supplier, so a component supplier. Of course, we work very closely with the component suppliers which define the so-called sensing unit, meaning indeed the light sources as well as the front end, whether integrated or discrete. This intimacy has brought us actually to building over time a lot of IP and knowledge in this domain, and we see that customers are actually asking us also to deliver not only the chip but also the sensing unit. Even in a way, we are seeing that the market is asking us to develop a secondary business model, which is not only the chip but also sell a module. And in that sense, we will be taking the responsibility of offering this to the market. When it comes to the light source in specific, I cannot make names, but it's easy to be understood. We are working with the major supplier of LED. We have been scouting and selecting, but now we're working very closely to develop such a sensing unit, where the light source will be optimized, actually designed purposely to meet the requirements that we set.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And could you comment, Giuseppe, on what are your engagements, collaborations with industry? How is that going?
Okay. As I said, we have a bit hands-tied, but I can say, I cannot make names, but what I can say that our positioning is very clear, that we position as a component supplier. At best, instead of a chip, we can offer a sensing unit platform. But we, in general, we leave our customers the full ownership of any IP related to the application of the integration of our sensor or sensing unit in their own system. This model is working very well because the customers like that they have the freedom to create their own IP. Even though our solution is such as a one-size-fits-all, they can create their own IP around our chip, which can make their product eventually unique. And so that's the model of engagement that we have, and it's proven to be very successful. So we don't mingle with our customers, very separated business. And
wonderful. Maybe I also have a question for Karel.
All right.
So would you perhaps comment on how we are further expanding the manufacturing capabilities here in this country.
Yeah.
So enable the growth and scaling up of these companies.
And I think discussions like this on applications are really driving the business of the components, because if there's nobody having an application, why buy a chip? On the other hand, the chip is creating the differentiation you really need to make a difference in this world. So we need a complete supply chain for that, and I showed we do have a complete supply chain for that, from design up to the manufacturing of the wafers and the packaging of it. And all of these have expansion. But there are multiple platforms. We just talked about indium phosphide. Another one that and effectively we are building a fab here to expand the capacity in Europe. There's also another platform that is a lot of used in sensing applications, which is so-called silicon nitride, a very low loss, broad wavelength platform. We're actually starting to build on a new fab in the north of the Netherlands as well. And for others, in that sense, we are agnostic to technology. If it's useful for an application, we will look at it. So there is also things like silicon photonics. There is no fab of that in the Netherlands, but our partner, IMEC, does actually have a facility to produce at least the first volumes of those chips. It's of course not a volume manufacturer, but we have other partners for that. So I think we can cover quite a broad range of technologies, not only in research, but also actually to produce them.
Yeah, I think that's very important, right? So driving design, assembly, and then mass manufacturing, and all here in the Netherlands. So this is really the hot spot for integrated photonics. There was an interesting question. Biomarkers are always listed as application, but measuring only spectra is not sufficient to detect biomarkers in real in vivo applications.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we will have more webinars.
That's great.
You're right, and I listed a whole long range of potential technologies that could be used in various ways. You really need more than that, indeed. That's why we're going to organize a few more webinars. And yes, the photonic part is one part, but as a user, you want to have a solution, and that's mostly a combination of a sensor, software, electronics, a user-friendly interface, etc., especially if you start talking about volume applications. So yes, that's that. We also can find partners that can support you in that. And I can say, we talked about a number of interesting applications, but if you in the audience have some things that you think about that would be very great to actually develop, contact PhotonDelta, because we can help to set up even more interesting startups in order to make the healthcare effectively better suited in this age of an aging population and rising cost.
Wonderful. And maybe to last minute, so Karel, if you have 10-second speech to give us information, what is it you want us to remember about integrated photonics for health?
I think integrated photonics allows you a large number of sensing technologies and different spectral technologies that were hitherto possible but big, bulky and expensive. And I think what you should keep in mind is that almost anything you can think of nowadays you can put in a chip.
That's wonderful. Yeah, fantastic. And thank you very much. Brilliant speakers, great panel, great questions, great answers, and there will be a follow-up webinar. And everybody, of course, please contact the respective companies here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.